Well, this is why we cannot have nice things. We have made it so far, 2 years almost, all the trademark searches, all the, internet, everything else has led us to this. We were like, what, 5 days away? Gonna get the XFL team announcements next week. Rod Woodson talked about it on the Pat McAfee show this week. And lo and behold, the teams potentially have leaked here, courtesy of XFL Newsroom. I have the article here I'll pull up in a minute. Running down this today, I have Evan Willsmore standing by here from his studies. I'll bring him on in just a second. Anyone else that wants to call in, I have pinned the chat to the top of the YouTube here. I've spent all morning in private messages and public messages and Twitter and Facebook and everything else. Everyone wants to talk about the XFL team names. So I said, let's get everybody on here and we're going to do it right now. Husky says, hit the smash button. Yeah. So if you have comments about all this, if you have feelings, anything else, feel free, call in. Links at the top. I'll be here for at least an hour. I got to head down south here in a little bit. I'm going to pull up the articles. We all know what we're talking about. And then I'm going to bring in Evan. So courtesy of Newsroom. And I went back and forth with Stefan last night. I said, I do not believe this. I still don't know if I believe this, but this is the XFL shop page that leaked all this has been taken down. We know this is not the first time that we've seen this happen. Obviously the XFL logos, all of that leaked earlier before the launch here back in the summer. But Stefan was doing some digging. We have the Pat McAfee plug and all that. But on the XFL shop, a lot of cached images on there. But there is what is text descriptions to many teams that Stefan believes. Now Mark has run the story with XFL News Hub as well. Mike Mitchell has reached out to the XFL brass. The page has been taken down, these pages, but these are the names that we have. Courtesy of Spot, we have the Arlington Renegades, DC Defenders, Orlando Guardians, Houston Roughnecks, San Antonio Brahmas, the Brahma Bowl, The Rock, Seattle Sea Dragons, St. Louis Battlehawks, and then the Vegas Vipers. So I'm going to bring in Evan here, standing by. Evan's down at LSU now. Congrats on his first year of college there. Saw the Saints lose a brutal game against the Buccaneers last week. Evan, I feel like we're live on scene here. Breaking news, car crash. How are you holding up?
Yeah, doing good. Just been, kind of balancing studies and all the XFL stuff that's coming out. Obviously, should be a pretty exciting week next week. But, there's a lot of stuff coming out, and yeah, just excited to break it down.
So we have some of these. So like the Arlington Renegades, we have a Mac the Nike reaction list. Arlington Renegades, I think that was expected, right? Obviously, Arlington seems to have a deal going with the XFL, wanting them to, not call it the Dallas team this year. I think, that's expected. DC Defenders, we've heard a long time. But some of these names, Orlando acquiring the Guardians name, which was previously the New York franchise, Houston Roughnecks returning, the San Antonio Brahmas, like I said, The Rock was always known as the Brahma Bowl when he was wrestling. San Antonio Brahmas, the Seattle Sea Dragons, not the Seattle Dragons. And then we have the St. Louis Battlehawks and the Vegas Vipers. What did you think when you saw all this today, Evan?
Yeah, well, first thing that stood out to me, I think, was just the number of retentions, right? I mean, you've got Renegades, Defenders, Guardians, Roughnecks, and Battlehawks and Vipers all coming back. And then, the Sea Dragons, well, that one is, I guess, kind of a retention if you count the Dragons part. We'll see if it's actually Sea Dragons or not. That one is a bit weird to me too. But yeah, the number of retentions definitely stuck out. Obviously the league is under different ownership from when it was in 2020. So it was a bit surprising to see all these names that were sort of carried over. The Roughnecks were definitely a surprise. St. Louis, I kind of expected that one to be retained just because, the way the Battlehawks fans were. If it was anything other than the Battlehawks, I think people would have freaked out a bit in St. Louis. And we've talked about that before. But yeah, a lot of retentions. And then the other thing, too, that was interesting was the Vegas Vipers. As you can see, I've got my Tampa Bay Vipers shirt on from, a few years ago now. But it was a bit weird that, they didn't give the Vipers name to the Orlando team. You think if they're going to retain that and they want that sort of, brand to carry over. I mean, Orlando's not far from Tampa. And to see that they've put it all the way over in Vegas on the West Coast is a bit interesting to me, that choice, if it's true, of course.
Yeah, so no, and this is make or break because I told Stefan last night. I said I don't know if I believe this, but now that obviously Mark's picked up the article as well. Mike is kind of at least talking with the XFL people. They have taken down the shop. It feels a little bit more. I came home. I was many beers in and came home from a One Republic concert last night that I took my wife Dorothy to. That they actually didn't play a lot of One Republic songs. They played a lot of number one singles that the lead singer had written for other bands, which was kind of weird. So maybe I wasn't in the best mood to find out about the Seattle Sea Dragons and the Vegas Vipers. But here we are today, a little more clear-headed. Zach checking in. Yeah, so we have some of these. It was so weird about this. So like I said, Stefan, it's either make or break because this is either the news story of the century or we're all going to look like fools here come Wednesday next week. But we have a lot of stock images here, right? Like a lot of these, the Dallas, these, the Dragons, these gentlemen, these stock images with the ladies, like that's all been on the site forever. That was there before. That's reused kind of stock assets from before. But it's these texts on here. Like I said, the Seattle Sea Dragons, San Antonio Brahmas. Interesting to me. I last night said, I will not believe about the Sea Dragons. And then I was, of course, reminded that we do have the Seattle Seahawks. So I guess that's not out of there. Evan, what do you think about I think a lot of people presumed that the Vipers would carry from Tampa to Orlando, keep it down there. Vegas Vipers. I mean, I get the alliteration there, but it seems weird to have that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And, it's weird to me because, especially again, if these are all true, they've retained a lot of the names from 2020. And I'm a fan of that. I didn't expect it to happen, but it's nice to sort of have that brand recognition. Fans from 2020 can still kind of reconnect with their fan bases. And it's not all lost, right? It's not all gone. But yeah, the one in Vegas definitely stands out. And, I don't know what the idea was behind that. I mean, somebody, I think it might have been on McAfee's show. I can't remember who guessed it, but somebody said like rattlesnakes, and Woodson, said that was close to it. So that one sounds accurate to me. But yeah, I mean, Vipers doesn't really, it just doesn't have that connection. Again, you talk about like the alliteration, like Vegas Vipers, it does roll off the tongue pretty nicely, but it just doesn't make sense from a brand perspective because, again, since the Vipers were originally in Florida, you'd think that the Florida franchise, which is now in Orlando, would retain that name. If you've got, things like the Battlehawks staying in St. Louis and the Roughnecks staying in Houston and, all that good stuff. So, yeah, I don't know where they're going with that one. But, again, until the brand is developed a bit further, until we see, jerseys and uniforms and helmets and the whole bit, I can't really draw any conclusions. And I feel the same way about San Antonio. The Brahmas, I don't really know where they're going with that. I definitely thought that was a unique choice. But again, until there's some sort of design or concept that comes out, merchandise, I don't really know what to say. So we'll just have to see. Now it's kind of a waiting game again.
Yeah. Jenna wanted the Roadrunners. I know that was a popular San Antonio. The Brahmas is so weird because that is so rock. And I have my Zoa here. I'm going to crack open in a minute. My Black Adam Zoa, which if we want to talk about, synergy at its finest, I said, let's get some XFL logos on there. That would be good. But the Brahmas is so weird because that was such the rock. Like, are we going to have a Texas? We're going to have the Bullhorns, and you got, was it TCU or whatever? Like all those Texas teams and I can't imagine that. Really unique to the Rock. I don't think there are Vipers in Vegas. I don't know what the lizards in the desert are there. And then moving the Guardians down to Orlando. It just doesn't vibe as well. I mean, there was the Guardians of New York, and it was the Gargoyles, and kind of all that stuff. Weird to see how they would kind of rejigger that and move that. We have Dirty standing by too. Dirty, give me a thumbs up when you're ready to hop on here. I know Dirty's been working with his device to get on. But if anyone, call in, comment, whatever. Jenna says the Zoas. Evan, are you surprised? And this was funny. And I don't think they're connected, but the timing of it is hilarious that just today, after we had the big leak last night, Shop Zone, all that stuff, everything taken down today, XFL posts a job listing for a website director today. I mean, I know that that's probably not connected, but it is remarkable timing with that. Any thoughts on any of that stuff, Evan?
I mean, yeah, it could just be a weird coincidence. I agree. I can't say it's connected, but yeah, it is interesting, and given before, like, we had the cities come out that were leaked, before the actual official release, and those all turned out to be correct. So, something tells me that these should be pretty accurate. So yeah, it's kind of weird timing that they're looking for a website director after a second big league. I don't feel as confident about this one, I will say. I definitely do think some of it is accurate, but a few of them I'm kind of just again waiting before I kind of jump on and say, oh well, this is what I think about this and that, because again, I have my initial reaction, but that's far different from what it is when it's officially released by the league, and then even further you know kickoff in 2023, because that's a few months away, and I'll kind of have to wait to see what things look like then before I get a full idea. But no, I do think it is interesting, again, the timing of all this.
We were so close. I mean, how many of us have done trademark searches and the Jake Henrys of the world, and every day, and we're looking in the Mexico trademark directories, we're looking in the EU trademark directory, all this kind of stuff. And then I don't know, it feels weird that this is again leaking out, just like the logo did, just like the rebrand did before. Dirty, are you ready to hop on? You want to give me a thumbs up? I don't know if Dirty can hear me. We got Dirty. Dirty's driving, wanting to call in from the XFL, from the X Fan show now, I believe. We have these names suck. Evan, do you imagine, and I don't, but anyone that was going to watch the XFL not watching it now because maybe they weren't happy with any of these names?
No, I really don't. Again, people might not be thrilled about certain brands or names or things like that, but I feel like, again, if you really care about the league, you care more about the players and the opportunity over brand identity. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that brand identity isn't important. It's a big way to, sort of sell yourself and represent a certain city and fan base, but, it's not the whole thing. And I think over time, if these names stick, we'll get used to them. We'll get used to the designs and logos and everything like that, just like we did in 2020. Because I remember, there were certain people who were skeptical when the first, set of names came out, 3 or 4 years ago, however long it's been. Again, like the Houston Roughnecks, like that doesn't sound, too flashy, I guess, at first, or at least that was kind of my thing too. But then once the uniforms came out and once they started playing and once the team sort of came together, then I was able to see like, okay, like this is actually going to work. This is really cool. It represents the city well, and people are rocking with it. So I think that's the most important thing. And I wouldn't get too carried away with, names right now when there's all this other stuff going on. We've got a draft, that's going to sneak up on us in a few weeks, a lot of other important developments than just this.
Let's try to bring on Dirty. Dirty's driving. I've been trying to message him. Dirty, can you hear us? I don't think Dirty's step mark's working. All right. We see him driving. That's great. I do think once we get once we get the merchandise, I'm already wrapping my head around the Seattle Sea Dragons. I was Googling a lot of Sea Dragons images this morning, trying to see what that looked like. I know Matt Lyon said he was doing the same. I guess just the biggest shock is really the Guardians, the Brahmas, the Vegas Vipers in there. Zach has a comment. Zach wants to, we're trying to bring Dirty on. They message him. All he does is confirm. Tell me what it says. Evan, moving forward for next week, obviously we have the team announcements coming and all of that. Any ideas how you would like to see them roll that out next Wednesday, presumably?
I mean, I don't think it should be too much different than what they did the first time with the cities. I mean, they had that cool town hall thing, going back a few months now. And I like the way that was set up. That was a great way to engage the fans. A lot of people were into that. And I don't know if it's going to be as exciting this time, because again, if it's a lot of the same, rollover from 2020, it might not be as exciting, if some of the names are the same like they are in this list. But then again, even there was a lot of retention from the cities, I guess from 2020 to now when they revealed the cities. And, that's still excited a lot of people. So, if they do some sort of live stream and, they kind of break it down like city by city. And I think the most important part, is having the coaches talk about it. If they have some sort of promotional video where the coaches speak about, what the brand means, what the name means, what it's supposed to represent, then I feel like that might help sort of calm down the fans that aren't as thrilled about it. And for people who are thrilled about it, it just kind of makes the story even better. Something you want to rally around, something you want to support, and most importantly, put money into, because that's what they're looking for. In terms of merchandise sales and just ticket sales, obviously, and things like that. So yeah, I'm interested to see how they do it for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was too different or very similar to what it was with the initial city rollout.
We got Nick standing by here, and I think Nick's a first-time caller. Nick, I remember this is a PG stream, so I know some people might be upset today about some of this stuff. We're going to bring Nick on here. Nick, what do you make of all this stuff? You've got your Defenders sweatshirt on. You're so tiny in my screen, but how are you reacting to this news?
So obviously, I'm happy about the Defenders and all that. The one thing that I wanted to point out that I think is kind of weird and might be why this might not be real is because if you remember back when they did the city deal, they had the tickets and they had the color tied to the team, and the colors don't make a lot of sense with the names now. I mentioned it in chat earlier, but you thought when you saw Orlando, you saw green, okay, Vipers again, but now they're the Guardians. I don't know why the Guardians would be lime green, and Vipers can be red, but that also doesn't kind of make a lot of sense. So that's the only reason I'm skeptical about any of this. I mean, it's from their website. I can't imagine it would be fake, but that's a weird choice if that's true.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up the article here, Evan. I can't remember which one of you guys did the write up for that. Thoughts on the colors relating? We had that when they had the big city announcements.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can do a lot with the colors, right? But as Nick pointed out, there are some, I guess, what's the word, discrepancies. Like, for example, Houston with the Roughnecks, that was red. Their primary color was red. And there was a bit of blue tied in, to certain parts of the jersey and the helmet design. But, now they're saying the primary color is going to be blue. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to use that or what it's going to look like. Again, it's kind of hard to picture things when you only get, one color and a city name. You don't even get a team name officially or anything like that. So again, there's still a lot, I need to see before we start drawing conclusions. And again, who knows how accurate this is. Maybe this was just some initial work they were doing and they've tweaked stuff, since then before they're going to do the official release. Who knows? I mean, there's still a lot up in the air. But yeah, I mean, the color coordination is definitely important. Like, for example, again, wearing that Vipers shirt, you typically think of Vipers as like the green, yellow, and that kind of goes in with sort of that, tropical theme that was in Florida, right? It's super humid, kind of like a jungle where you'd find Vipers, and I don't think, if the Vipers were like red, that would really tie in as well. So that's important for that sort of brand recognition and identity that I was talking about earlier.
So let's correlate here. So this is Brandon wrote this for News Hub. I found the article up here. So we have Arlington blue, light blue, Bob Stoops. So that's the Renegades. That's fine. I mean, that kind of matches. Mm-hmm. They had a little bit of a dark blue. That Nick, Evan, any thoughts on this one? We'll kind of go one by one here. But Nick, do you have any thoughts on the light blue with the Arlington Renegades?
I mean, for me, I think it just means that they're probably going back to the branding that they had in 2020, and I don't think there'll be a lot of changes to it.
Look at Coach Stoops' piercing eyes. I mean, this really is the most wonderful headshot here. Bob Stoops looking nice in his XFL polo shirt jacket. All right, so St. Louis, that's fine. Battlehawks, Anthony Becht. I saw Coach Becht was looking for restaurant reservation ideas. Presumably that event's coming. Okay, so here we go. San Antonio, we got Hines Ward, and then we've got the Brahmas there. And like I said, with Rock, I'm going to pull that up. Nick, thoughts on yellow as it relates to the Brahmas?
I'll be honest, I didn't even know what a Brahma was this morning until I woke up and saw the article. So I don't have any opinions.
Well, this is wild. Wait, hang on. So how do I got to share. This is wild. I'm going to pop in here. The Rock covered his Brahma Bull tattoo. This is wild. So this is where the squirty. That's crazy. I didn't realize that The Rock, you guys see that? That was the Rock wore that for most of my life here on this right bicep, and getting rid of that, putting the big, looks like a skull on there. But that was The Rock. The Rock is Evan. Who is the one that looked up a Brahma can also be a rooster? I think it's more of like a state of mind than it is an animal.
Yeah, I mean, Pat was the one who put that in our chat with the rooster in it, and I didn't know what it was either. I was very confused when I looked at Brahmas. At first, I actually thought it was a misspelling of Bahamas, and then I got really confused. I was like, "Wait, are they going to have a game in the Bahamas or something?" So yeah, I had to do a bit of digging on that one. But yeah, definitely an interesting choice. And I mean, you're onto something there with the whole tattoo bit. It might just sound sort of like, I don't know, might just sort of sound like some regular fanfare if you're going that deep and looking at, tattoos on The Rock's bicep. But it is an important distinction. I mean, it is very The Rock, like you said. It's one of those branding things. The Rock has always been that way. So, we'll see what they make of that. That definitely is the most interesting one for me in terms of like what the logo is going to look like and how they're going to sort of tie that into the XFL's overall identity.
Yeah, so according to Wikipedia here, Brahma is the god of creation, the epitome of knowledge, and the Vedas, creator of the universe. Vedas is a large body of religious text originated. So I don't understand where we get like the Brahma bull, the Brahma rooster, kind of all that stuff. God of creation. That to me is an odd name for a team franchise. Nick, any thoughts now that we know the definition?
Yeah, so because I didn't know what it was, I looked it up. The first thing I saw was the rooster thing. I was real confused. Then I saw the bull thing, but I also saw that, and I think that's what you clicked on with the wiki, is it's a Hindu god. So all, and I don't think any of the three are related in any respects. I don't think we're gonna have a Hindu god as a mascot. That would be probably problematic in some respect, but I think it's just the bull. Texas, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, the Brahma bull is reared for in the meat industry, particularly in areas with good resistance to hot or tropical conditions. So I guess San Antonio, along with others, they want cattle to meat of lower quality than that of. That's weird. I mean, to me, it is because it's the Brahma bull. I just can't imagine. I can't fathom naming a XFL franchise off of The Rock's wrestling character back in, however many years ago that was.
Yeah.
Let me see here. I can't see the comments on. We've got some new comments popping in. I'm reloading Mark's website there so we can do that. Do vipers exist in Nevada? Because rattlesnakes and vipers are two completely species. I'm not well equipped to know that anyone with that, the Vegas vipers. Let me pull that up here because we've got. Okay, so we've got Seattle Sea Dragons, Jim Haslett, that's fine. DC, obviously Guardians, that's fine. So the Vegas, this red behind Rob Woodson, I can't imagine a snake being red.
I did see, I looked it up. I looked up Viper pictures and I did see one that was red. So, and it looked like there was a bunch of colors. So I don't know, but yeah.
I'm just getting Game of Thrones over Vin Martell. That's all I'm getting when I'm looking up the red Vipers.
I just looked up Viper, like snake, and looked at random pictures to see if like the snake was. Yeah, you get cars.
Maybe it's the red car. Evan, I think Evan, you got a good head for BS here. On a scale of, I've lost Nick there. I'm so sorry. On a scale of this is 10 out of 10, these are the team names, and 0, we're all wasting our time today. Where do you lie on this? Where's your BS scale?
I mean, so if you're saying on a scale from 0 to 10, how accurate it is, with 10 being like these are 100% the team names, I'm going to go with like a 6. I'm still kind of in the middle. I think some of it's right, and I'm still kind of on the fence about some other stuff. I think the general framework is there, but, whether or not, like, just the Orlando Guardians, like, again, we discussed that earlier, but that still does seem very strange to me. They take the brand that they had in New York and bring it down to Orlando. And then, we were just talking about the Vipers and this whole, being red business. Like, that doesn't make much sense either, unless the only way I could really justify that is like, red is like the color of, like, I don't know, hell or death or something. So it's kind of like a dangerous and fierce stance. But then you'd think they'd have something else than a snake that's typically green representing that. So again, it's kind of hard to tell. I think some stuff, is there and then others isn't. And then we just, if you look at Orlando there with, Terrell Buckley, they've got bright green in the background, which is the original Vipers color. So again, there's still a few things there that I don't know if they all line up, but I do think some of it is accurate for sure. Like I do think there's going to be some retention, and I do think there are going to be some completely new names like the Brahmas, even though we still don't really know exactly what that is or how they're going to use it.
Nick, what do you got? I didn't realize it was such a bright green on this. I mean, to move the Guardians here, and then we had the Apollos back in the AAF. Thoughts on this with the bright green talking with the Guardians?
The only thought I had when I saw the bright green, I don't know if either of you have played Minecraft before, but the Guardians in that are green also. It's definitely not that, but that's the only connection between the two, because you're thinking like gargoyles and that kind of guardian. That doesn't make much sense, but also like guardian's kind of a nebulous term, so you could probably tie it to a bunch of different random things, but I have no clue. That's really the thing that's the big hang up for me, is I have no idea why that's a made up thing. That's not a thing in real life, so why would they tie it to a random game? I don't know. It's weird.
We got some comments here. Flame Man Wing, could be a car now that you mention it. Dangerously fast car. Is the Viper a car? We're talking the Viper car is the Vegas Vipers, Evan.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously the Dodge Viper was a very, popular car from the early 2000s. And, I'm not going to get too into my car stuff, but, it was a popular car and it was fast and, had the V10 and represented a lot of, that sort of power and drive that you'd want to see from a team. But again, like Nick said, you can connect so much of this stuff to so many different things. Like, that's just one of those, that's kind of one of those ideas you have late at night when you're just thinking about random stuff. Like, maybe it could be that somehow, but I don't know.
Go Nick.
I feel like copyright stuff would be an issue with that. I can't imagine they would tie it to a specific car. That would be a legal nightmare, I'm guessing.
What do you think about having like I said before, the bull in Texas with that? Like, there's just so any way to differentiate that. The Roughnecks different, right? And we had the Renegades. Just any thought of that? Of like, we have another bull cow themed team in Texas.
For me,
anyone, yeah, you can hop in.
I mean, it makes sense, like if you think about a lot of these names, I mean, Sea Dragons, Seahawks, all of them are kind of tying themselves to previous teams in some respects. So I don't have much of an issue. I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, we hear Zach. Zach's a fan of the Sea Dragons. Wrapping my mind around that. I know Matt Lyons and I, like I said, we were doing that. Philip, happy we just got some kind of, yeah, I mean, I don't know. This isn't news though. I mean, I'm disappointed like I was last time, where like all I've wanted in the 2.5 years of running this podcast channel is like, we have a live event that we can like stream alongside of it and do. And like, we did have the Texas Live and I had to work like all of these things. We had the logo that kind of poo-pooed when that came out. This is feeling a little poo-poo. And like, all I want, and maybe this was going on back in 2020. I just wasn't podcasting, but I remember Dorothy and I standing at my computer watching like the Dragons come out, and we had the Renegades with the motorcycle and all that. I mean, Evan's smiling, just kind of remembering that stuff. Like, I guess we're just too in the weeds with this, and this is what we want. But are you disappointed, Evan, that maybe it's coming out this way?
I mean, I don't know. Look, when there's important bits of news, and especially for this sort of niche part of sports, because let's be honest, the spring football fan base is not as big as it is compared to the NFL or, other American major leagues like the NBA, NHL, MLB. I mean, you name it. So people really like to focus in on this kind of thing, and specifically because it's smaller. So I do expect leaks to happen, but, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I just don't know the accuracy of this one. I felt very confident when the first leak came out with the team names. I looked through the list and I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. The only weird thing that was, noticeable is that there was the 3 Texas teams, but then we learned that the headquarters were in Arlington and they kind of wanted to have that, Texas focus. And that even during the town hall, they were talking about, how big football was in Texas, and, living in Louisiana and being right next to Texas, I can confirm that, there are very many big football fans, and football is a culture, a religion down here, however you want to put it. So a lot of that stuff made more sense as more things came out. But right now we just sort of have this random list, and there's not much else to build around it. So again, I'm interested to see just how many of these are true, how many names are retained from 2020, and then how many I guess new brand identities are formed through new names like the Brahmas, which I don't know, something tells me if that name is true, they're probably going with that because of copyright things. They couldn't name it the Bulls or some sort of generic name like the Longhorns, because UT already has that. So I feel like they were kind of limited there with their options, again, if that's true. But I'm sure they'll make some story and make it sound all cool. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, Max says we can't forget Brahma Bowl still used by The Rock for his Project Rock brand. Like, does The Rock, does he own? And this, I will Google this here in just a second. Like, does The Rock, who owns the Brahma Bowl trademark? Like, because then maybe that is like Evan said. Well, we can't have the steers, can't have the Longhorns, whoever. Like, here, Rock owns this. Like, hey, let's just roll that into that. Is that too cute by half though? Like, Nick, do you like that? Do we like that kind of synergy, or is that too cute?
I don't know if I care. Like. And that's the thing, is like, and that, you guys build content around the stuff. So you are so much more tied into it and like care about all the different little things. Cause you have to think about a show you make every week, but someone who's just kind of doing it for the fun of it and just watching it, as it goes, I kind of just roll with the punches. People talked a lot about, why are we getting this now and not, 3-4 months ago? And I'm like, I don't know, man, there's going to be football on in February either way. So I'll be there,
Yeah, because like you said, I got to live and die by this every week. Are you not worried? Are you not worried that this here, what are we at? Like, it's end of September, we're finding out this stuff. Does that not worry you as a fan?
No, because they have to, unless we start hearing rumors of a delay of the season, like it'll all come, Honestly, at this point, the thing I'm most like looking forward to and the thing I just want now is to start hearing players, because that's kind of why, the reason I'm into like these kind of leagues is because I like seeing players go from this league to the NFL, right? And like seeing guys develop. And I really want to see, okay, is it Cole Kelly? Is it Carson Strong? What are the names now? De'Aaron King, signed the like letter of intent or whatever, that's the only thing I'm like, oh, I need it now. But that's more of just a selfish thing. All this could come out in January and it really wouldn't matter,
Some here I just kind of searched the Brahma trademark. So we have a Brahma Bowl that's a live trademark for like backpacks, car interior organizer bags, military duffel bags. So that's not so. It certainly seems like, at least in the world of sports, because you can have a trademark kind of in a variety of different. We could have the Brahma Bowls, and we're going to sell footballs, and we're not going to sell interior car bags or whatever. I don't know. That vibes a lot with me. I don't like it, but I can see them wanting to incorporate The Rock into that. Let me pull up. I'll remove this. Max, I want to say a lot of San Antonio residents aren't going to be the biggest fans of teams named after a cow. Well, there's a lot of Ute fans. There are also a lot of fans of other schools. I don't know the Texas football. Evan, like you said, you're a neighbor there. Thoughts on like another cow-themed Texas team?
Yeah, look, it's it definitely gets a bit repetitive. And if anybody's watching this, you can see I've got the Longhorns up here on the wall, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, it's definitely not the most. Everybody thinks of Texas, and one of the first three things you think of is, like Longhorns or something to do with a bull or a big animal. But again, it does tie in with the whole Texas theme. And because they have three teams in Texas, they got to do something, and since Dallas and Houston kind of already had the priorities being, Dallas or Arlington, I better be careful there with the way I put that. Arlington, was already kind of there from 2020, and that's where the headquarters are. And then Houston was there in 2020, and they were like the best team in the league, sort of like the poster child of the XFL in a way. Those kind of have priority over, this sort of add-on in San Antonio. Now, I'm not trying to, say San Antonio is going to be bad. I'm not trying to put him down. I love Hines Ward. Everybody watched Hines Ward, back in the day when he was playing 10, 15 years ago. And I think they're going to be a good team. But again, it's just sort of, what can you do with what's given? You're restarting a league for the third time. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do. You've centered things around, this market in Texas where football is really big. So you're just trying to do something that hasn't been used too much. And, again, we'll have to see, and we'll have to wait until all this is official and they roll out something with, a bit more detail. But I think they're just, trying to put something together. Again, yeah, Brahma, the bull, it's not the most original thing, but it's hard for me to imagine what else they would have, tried to do or tried to incorporate. I'm sure there's a few things, but again, we'll have to see. I can't speak too much on it until I really know that it's the Brahmas and I get a league notification from the XFL saying, welcome to San Antonio Brahmas, to our league or whatever.
Yeah, we had Dirty on. Dirty was backstage again, then bounced off again. Got to bring him up. We're getting the definitions of rattlesnakes or venomous snakes that form the genera Crotalus and cistrus of the subfamily, the pit vipers. All rattlesnakes are vipers. We had the Texas rattlesnake. I would have preferred maybe that we got that with Stone Cold Steve Austin back in the day with The Rock and the Brahma Bulls over that. I'm trying to get Dirty on. Dirty's like cross-country driving here. He says that stuff. Not enough Rough Riders. Or we're talking that we want more Saskatchewan, more Saskatchewan Rough Riders things in there. Nick, are you a CFL fan?
I am not, actually.
Okay.
I think I've actually watched a few games, so I know who Nathan Rourke is. But and this is actually something I was going to mention if we got off topic and we're allowed to talk about stuff, is you mentioned today on your I listened to your show today, how you want players to stick around for multiple years and become kind of household names, and you don't like the XFL trying to basically send everyone to the NFL because of continuity. But I'm the exact opposite. The reason I got into this was I was interested. I'm a diehard Ravens fan. I'm a diehard NFL fan. And I was like, oh, it's interesting watching basically Last Chance U. So when it comes to the CFL, where, guys go, but it's its own thing. And guys tend to stick around there. It's hard for me to get into it. And also, if the Baltimore Stallions were still around, maybe I would, be a fan of them. But, it's so far away. There's nothing close to me. There's no city allegiance. So I just never really got into the CFL like that.
It is funny. And just speaking of team names for our, anyone listening that potentially doesn't watch the CFL. CFL has horrendous team names as well. BC Lions are fine, but then we have the Rough Riders. We used to have two different Rough Riders. We have the Red Blacks, which is based off the Lumberjack black and red on there. Montreal Alouettes. Evan, where do you rank these potential XFL names versus the 9 that we have in the CFL? Who has the strong? If these are the XFL names, who has the stronger swath or worse swath of team names?
Yeah, it's both are kind of a tier below the NFL, and I think that's pretty clear. Maybe even the USFL, even though they've got some weird names like the Maulers. I didn't really know how to feel about that. I suppose the XFL names are a bit better than the ones in the CFL. I covered Hamilton last year, and, Tiger Cats was always a bit of an interesting name. My dad would always get confused because he thought I was talking about the Cincinnati Bearcats. Which cat are you talking about? There's some, things that don't really make sense, but you realize I don't think you realize until, you actually work in one of these leagues as part of a development, a brand, marketing or something like that, which I've never done. But again, I still don't think you realize, how hard it is to create, a name and an identity and, something that resonates with people, because even if all those names are weird, like the Saskatchewan Rough Riders or the Montreal Alouettes, I couldn't imagine it being anything different now. You know what I mean? Because that's what I've watched for, several years, and that kind of just, sticks with me. So again, yeah, team names are weird and they're unique, and, some people like them, some people hate them, some people, feel neutral, I guess you'd say. But I don't know. To me, it's more about, what you can actually do with the name and, how it sticks with people over, how it rolls off the tongue kind of thing.
It's funny. We had a comment here, and I'm going to try to bring on Dirty. I will say Max needs to call in. Max has been in the comments for all this time. Max said he was busy, but if you have enough time to comment in, you have enough time to call in for 2 minutes. It's just funny talking about the XFL and the USFL, merging, working together. I had my interview with Rod Smith, who's like the main CFL play-by-play broadcaster last week. He was on the show week ago. And like the second we got them recording, that was his first question was like, so when do you think the XFL and the USFL are going to merge? I'm like, I mean, this all that anyone ever cares about, and they don't know about any of this other stuff. I said, Rod, I don't really know about that, but let's see here. Jenna has a comment, then we'll bring on Dirty. Jenna, the XFL owners are not good at announcements and not good at team names. They certainly don't seem to be having everything under lock and key here. And my feeling as it relates to the XFL right now and kind of the interactions and what I've seen, and there's been a lot of stuff going on with the podcasts here and everybody else here this last week. And you might have noticed a lot of podcasting changing their names, to Dirty Show is, the X-Fan Show now. I own the Marquez trademarks. So that's always just putting that out there. But I think that the Rock and Danny and them view this as a big time league, right? Like we're not top 4, right? Not top 5 with soccer, but like we're in that tier. And I don't think that it will not get to that tier at some point. I think all football and all that, but I think that it seems like they're at odds sometimes with the fan base that is like focused on spring football. And like, I don't think that they expect people to be digging through the code of their websites and trying to find stuff and looking at the YouTube links and trying that stuff. Like, Nick, what do you make of your thoughts so far? And I know you said like you don't live and die by the team names, all that, but am I saying anything that resonates, or am I totally off?
I think that we are like the 1%, if we're being honest, of even who watch it, right? So yeah, they're not being very great to us, which is not like that are like gonna be worrying about a leak on a website, but if you're being honest with yourself, we're not really the target that they're gonna need to go for. We're gonna be there either way. So these bigger announcements, them not being under lock and key, I understand it, because if there's let's say they have similar numbers to the last XFL and they're getting 2-3 million watching it, we're such a small portion of that number that I don't know if it really matters.
Yeah, I know, and it's hard to hear, as a content provider. I know like other people. I mean, not living that. I do feel like sometimes I care much more about a lot of the inner workings day to day than maybe some of the people, and I know it's hard to say. And I mean, simply like I've chosen to do this as a hobby, as something that I like to do. I mean, some people, it is work. We are doing this and we're clocking off and we're going home. Let's bring on, let me hide this. Let me see if Dirty's driving, but I have to get Dirty's opinion. Let's see if this works. Dirty, keep this PG. How are you doing?
Listen, thank you for inviting me on the show. If you actually would do a live show read, I think the X-Fan Show, we might have some competition with all those comments that I'm seeing from everybody. So if you would do a live show, I think we'd actually have some competition, bro.
Walk us through. I'm getting a little echo when I'm talking back to you. So give me your thoughts on everything going on.
So here's what I'm going to say this. You know me, I love to speculate all kinds of stuff, right? I think these names are not real because you look on the site now, the stuff's gone, right? Now, it really depends on how you want to look at it. I keep hearing people, reading the comments. People are talking about, oh, when's the league's going to merge? When are they going to do this? When are they going to do that? Really look at it. The USFL was a TV production ran by a TV company. The XFL is a movie production being ran by a movie company. Look, if those are the names, whoo, them some bad names, and they've had 25 months, and that's the best names they came up with. I mean, come on, man. I mean, really? That's what you come up with in 25 months? That's your names? I mean, it's kind of a joke.
Dirty, why don't you like the names?
It's not that I said I didn't like the names. I think each name fits the city. Like, I didn't like the Battlehawks when they first got it in St. Louis. I thought it was the dumbest name of my life. I'm like, well, what the hell do Battlehawks have to do with St. Louis? was just my opinion, but then it grew on me. I get why they would do Orlando I get why they would do Vegas as the Vipers because, there's a lot of rattlesnakes out there. I get why, if this is true with San Antonio, I get why they would do the Brahma, but I mean, some bad names, if you ask me, man. Bad names. 25 months? That's what you come up with? Come on, 2020, we had decent names beside the Battlehawk name. This is my opinion.
I'll mute Dirty while I time just so we're not getting any feedback. In terms of the Vegas franchise, is the biggest swing and a miss not just calling it the Las Vegas Outlaws? Nick, your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't have hated it, like if you did like the Outlaws and the Rage in Orlando, and then you had a bit of a tie to all of them. But it's and he mentioned the Battlehawks, and I think the Roughnecks were also kind of a weird name to start out. Like, what's a roughneck? I don't think most people even knew what that was starting out. But I think it's a thing of like, yeah, like, would these be the names I picked? Probably not, especially for San Antonio. But you'll get used to them. It'll be a thing where, like, San Antonio, maybe now they're like, oh, I don't know about the Brahmas, but once, if they're good in February, March, then they're going to be, in all their Brahma merch or whatever, so.
Evan, what's the worst name, the Washington Commanders or the San Antonio Brahmas?
Commanders.
Ooh.
I'll cut in there.
I mean, I don't know. I would disagree. I'm just going to say the Brahmas for now. And I'm only saying that because I feel like the Commander's name was ripped from the AAF, which is like, I like the Commander's name. And, I'm not saying that it's worse than the Brahmas, but both of them are kind of like, I don't know how to feel about it.
Daryl says, if you're winning, no one cares about a name, honestly. Dirty, I'll unmute you here. What between the change, the Orlando change with the Guardians, the Brahmas, the Sea Dragons, the Vipers, what to you was the biggest shock when you saw the list today?
The San Antonio team. That was really the biggest one shock to me because Dallas football in Dallas has such a long history. Like the guy in the corner up there just said, I lost his name. The guy with the longhorn and all that. I mean, that was the shock to me. Like, use the Gunslingers at least. San Antonio Gunslingers or something like that. But the Brahma, that's the one you pick for San Antonio. They better have if that is the name, they better have a really, really good mascot or a logo. That's all I got to say about that one.
Yeah, it's just it's hard with that, and like I said, I think this is knee jerk, whatever. But this was fun today. I mean, I just think a lot of people had a lot of things to say, a lot of conversations. Nick, are you talking with any other fans, anybody else, any other reacting to this, or is that why you're calling in that you need someone else to bounce ideas off of?
It's mostly that I'm a diehard in a space where I talked to my dad. My dad's into it also, mostly because I am, and through osmosis, he knows a lot of the stuff. But when it comes to like my friends and stuff like that, honestly, the spring stuff doesn't really come up a lot unless I bring it up. Like I was excitedly talking about Kevontae Turpin when he had those 2 touchdowns in the in the preseason, and then they're like, yeah, whatever, Nick, like. So yeah, this is kind of my outlet.
I never get, and Michael says can't use Gunslingers copywritten by the U.S. I never get that. Like I get not caring, right? Like I'm just watching the NFL. I never get like the dismissiveness of like the NFL fans, and especially with the CFL as well, and where it's fine. Like don't watch it. Don't you don't need to be a part of it. But that weird. Well, I'm going to be anti this. Evan, what do you make of that?
I mean, look, there's a lot of NFL fans who, in my opinion, just aren't committed to football enough to where they can really care about multiple leagues. Someone like me who has roots in football and really wants to turn it into a career, I care about every league. But to the person who, works a 9-to-5 job every day and is maybe a season ticket holder, for their the team in their town, they only really care about that team and, the players that are there. Everybody outside of that is just kind of, they exist, but it doesn't really matter. And then, that's just in the NFL. If once you start talking about leagues in Canada or other, leagues in the United States that are a tier below the NFL, there's some people who don't even know what you're talking about. And I really think that, and I've said this before, the best way that you can get fan interest in some of these leagues is to have them around for multiple years, which has proven extremely difficult. The AAF was, poorly managed. There was some money issues, and that didn't last the full season. The XFL looked a lot better, in my opinion, but, well, what happened, and the world shut down, and that was sort of the end of that. So, here we are, and I don't want to say this is like the last kind of chance, but, there's that old saying, third time's the charm. So I'm really hoping that, we can get through the season this time. I mean, we had the USFL. You could maybe say that was the third time, and they got through their season and won a championship. But obviously that didn't feel the same because of the hub format and a few other things. Still a very viable league. There was still a lot of talent. I've talked to many coaches and many players from that league who are very qualified. But this, to me, like getting fans in stadiums and building fan bases for multiple years to come is the type of thing that helps develop a league and develop fan bases and just honestly make people more interested. People who don't even have, that big of an interest in, maybe the NFL or football in general. If you're in a city, maybe the XFL is your outlet to find out more about that sport. Who knows? I mean, but it just, in my opinion, it starts with, getting that established fan base and getting that established brand and making yourself look legitimate. Because if you can't do that, and we can't have, continuity and I can't think of the other word I'm trying to say, but if you can't have, the same sort of consistent production, year after year for multiple years, it's going to be hard because you won't be able to build a history. And it's just, if you have like a new league pop up every year, it's just, it becomes hard for people even like me, to follow, who are really committed to this kind of thing.
We have a comment here I'll pull up in a minute, but the city of San Antonio has a high school called the Brahma, so it has familiarity. This is the AAF team names I pulled up, and I talked about this with Andy Murray. I'm calling him the professor now on our interview today. We did have a new episode come out today. This is kind of bonus content, so please check that out. Really great talk with Jason Greger, talking about all the CFL stuff. Headed in a big weekend for the BC Lions taking on Calgary. Andy and I did a big deep dive into the NFL alumni academies, their partnership with the XFL. It looks like we have another caller coming in here. I'll try to pull up in a second. Oh, we got Max. Yes. I'll bring up. But Andy and I did a big deep dive in the NFL alumni academies relationship with the XFL, how they're working together to get players into the NFL. I've kind of called it like Survivor Redemption Island, but how the timeline works with the XFL and the NFL working together. And then lots of CFL content as well. So make sure you check that out. I wish I was podcasting during the time of the AAFA just because of the unfortunate downfall they had on that. But these are the best names. The Atlanta Legends, Birmingham Iron, Memphis Express, Orlando Apollos, Arizona Hotshots. We have the Stallions, the Commanders. Obviously couldn't use either of those anymore. And the Fleet. Nick, were you an AAF guy?
Unfortunately. It was, so I say like, yeah, the names are good and it was fun, but I tell you, it's like, if I was to rank the enjoyability of them, the AAF would be below the USFL, XFL. It was clearly third for me because, there was a lot of talk about the USFL not having great quarterbacks. Other than they had like a few good ones. They had Garrett Gilbert, they had John Wolford and Logan Woodside. But outside that, there was even guys like Luis Perez weren't who he is now back then. And it was on like CBS Sports Network and all these like, nooks and crannies. And I loved it because I liked the concept of it, but it was not like even, the USFL, which I like the USFL. I'm not dogging on them, but man, it was not like it. You would have been complaining a lot back in the day.
Evan, thoughts on the AAF versus the XFL? And then Max is going to come in hot with a rant here. So any thoughts on the AAF names? Because you were an AAF guy, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the AAF was what really was what really sort of started, this sort of whole interest of mine into, all these little football leagues and things like that. That was like the first one I watched. And, the main reason was because we had a team in San Diego. The AAF, brought back pro football to San Diego, which is where I used to live. And we hadn't had that, for a few years prior to 2019 when they started playing there. But yeah, the talent in the AAF, I think, was a bit below where the XFL was. And, maybe people will call me biased and say, oh, well, since you cover the XFL, of course you're going to say that. But I watched both leagues, in 2019 and 2020. They weren't that far apart. I think the quarterback play in the XFL was definitely better. Nick touched on there were sort of like 3 quarterbacks in the AAF that were good. And then it kind of, there was a sheer fall off after that of sorts. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just kind of like what the XFL did a bit more. And, there was never, I guess, an uneasy feeling about the XFL. Like, because after what happened in the AAF, I was kind of on the edge of my seat. Like, okay, is this really going to work? Because all that stuff went down in the AAF, and, none of it was really good when you sort of did a deep dive. But then the XFL felt like a lot more, stable and secure. And, again, watching teams like, the Roughnecks, who I'm covering now, or, the Houston team, if they're going to keep the same name, whatever, watching things like that gave me a lot of confidence that this was a viable option, even though both those leagues didn't end up lasting, the AAF and the XFL, although now the XFL is coming back, fortunately. So.
All right. Excuse me as I cough into the microphone. That wasn't good podcasting. By God, that's Max Levy's music. By God. He's okay. Fine. Now, Max, you're muted. We're gonna unmute you. I can't unmute you. There you go. Max says he has a minute rant, and then we're gonna ask him some questions.
Start. Okay. So, no, I don't think anyone today has talked about this angle on the Guardian situation. I would be shocked if the XFL wants smoke with another major professional sports league over a team name or a brand again with the Guardians. So for that reason alone, before we get into all the mess of how that leak happened, I don't think these name lists is real, or at least not the new ones. On top of this, the brand transition wouldn't work. And if you're going to use that green color, are you turning a Guardian into like an Aquaman, basically? Is this like the Orlando Aquaman? Otherwise, that doesn't make sense. Also, having a team that's basically the San Antonio Dwayne Johnsons, because that's what this is, if with the Brahmas, is terrible. And this isn't the Rock Football League, so I don't think it's real for that either. And also, calling something the Vipers whenever it's a rattlesnake is like calling a square or rectangle, and I just don't see them doing something like that. So for that reason, I don't think this is legit at all.
Max, you're diehard, live and die, love XFL, love The Rock, we love Danny, we love Redbird Capital, Jerry Cardinell, we love all this stuff. If this is the list Wednesday come out, we have the San Antonio Brahmas. Are you out?
I'm not out, but I'm very angry. I mean, there's nothing team name wise that can make me out, because nothing team name wise will change the ability of the league to survive and thrive and all that. So, yeah, but just because the XFL had the Guardians before doesn't mean they can have it again now that Cleveland changed it. You can't bring back the Commanders just because the AAF had it. So, just addressing a comment real quick. But the only thing that would drive me out is if we come February and somehow Vegas doesn't have the stadium done, and like Vegas is playing in Texas, or they have to move Vegas at the last minute to another city, or Vegas is playing at like a high school stadium, or they bought out Sam Boyd the last second. If that happens, that would show me that the league like can't get stuff done on time, and that would have me worry about like the league surviving.
Yeah, I have seen that theory float out quite a bit, that if the XFL isn't able to figure out the Allegiant Stadium deal here, Nick, what egg would it be on the XFL fans' faces if they had to have a USFL and have the Vegas team play in Arlington?
That would not be great. That would be a pretty big scar on it. That would be brought up. I mean, hell, you've all been here with the USFL with the the hub and like the viability of it, and all the discourse over the months and months and months about it. It would be that again for the XFL as well. I don't see that as an option. I think they're playing at a high school field before they're throwing it in Arlington, frankly.
Evan, would that do you? I mean, I know Brandon's covering the team for Hub over there. You're Houston, right? Is that your team? Would that do you in if Vegas is having to pull USFL?
I mean, yeah, I think there's more questions about certain teams than others. And, there's been several debates about Vegas again, where they're going to play, what the whole deal is with, the name. I still think there's, things to be sorted out. But no, it wouldn't be an out for me. I mean, yeah, if they had to play in Arlington, that would not be a good look at all, because that would just look like they ran out of time and couldn't get their what together. I'm not going to say that because this is a PG podcast, but it's just, I mean, it's, again, you're starting a league from really the ground up. There might be some retention from 2020 as we talked about, but really this is a new ownership group doing this for the first time. And, there's going to be bumps, a lot of bumps, and I mean, they haven't publicly spoken of those bumps, I don't think, but I'm sure they're happening behind the scenes. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, in terms of the Vegas thing, because when I was at the Arlington press conference and I said to Danny, I said, well, how are you going to work? USFL, we saw the issues they have with fans. She goes, well, we're playing in the cities. We don't have to worry about that. I'm like, man, you're just setting yourself up that way. Max, so this leak today, it came out late last night. It was like 10 o'clock when I got home way late. Like, how does this happen? I mean, how does this happen again?
Probably the guy, or whoever works. Remember when we had that announcement back in April or May about they hired this guy to run the shop along with a couple other business side folks? Probably that guy, whoever was working under him, was trying to build out a section of the shop for when the team names drop with the team merch. They wanted to have all that sorted out, the different links and collections and whatnot. And they just, maybe they were putting a preliminary name there just so they could figure out what team was what. Maybe those actually are the names. I certainly don't think so. And but if they're just placeholders, whatever, and they just forgot to hide it or whatever, or they published it when they shouldn't have, it doesn't really matter to me because stuff happens. I just wish the league would come out and be like, this is not an accurate representation of what our names are. We will announce them when we are ready. That is it.
Yeah, it's weird that, I mean, they no-sell all of this. I mean, it was even the same thing with we were going to have the team announcements last on the 12th. Like it was that last, Monday before last, and then they ended up having the coach announcements, and it's like they no-sell. I don't know. It's like we're too cool for school, but yet we're running this alt league that it's really just the most diehards of football junkies alike that are going to be part of this. And I don't know. I mean, even with the website, we had that under lock and key for so long. Remember, Jake Henry broke the website and they had to take off the password protection because Jake logged into it too many times. And so it's now we're going through that again. I don't, if these are placeholder names, I can't imagine anybody in the world being like the San Antonio Brahmas. I'm going to put that. I mean, you would just call it San Antonio football team, Arlington football team. You would never. I mean, Nick, how do you imagine this all came out if this was an Office episode of the XFL here and Toby published something he was supposed to?
And that's the thing that as I've been sitting here, these have to be real because I don't see. I mean, I could be wrong. I agree, but just thinking about it, I don't see how they would come up with a new name. I don't see why, and then also the Guardians and the Vipers flip, that doesn't make sense unless it's real. It makes so little sense that it has to be real, kind of thing. Where it's none of us would have guessed that. The Guardians are going to be in Orlando. Everyone would have said Vipers or a new name, and vice versa. So I think it's real. It's just, the more I'm sitting here, the more I've gone from a 6 to an 8 or a 9, where I'm it just doesn't make any sense for it not to be real, unless someone was just bored and I need a filler name. Oh, I'll have some fun with it. That's the only scenario, but I feel like that's an Occam's razor where it's that doesn't make a lot of sense,
If anyone needs to hop off here, we're over an hour. I appreciate it. I know Evan's doing study stuff. I just don't want you to feel like you guys have to ride it out till the end. I really appreciate everyone's time today and doing all this. I just if the XFL does not strike me as the most like free-flowing place to work. I think we're very professional. We're running the league. I think we have everything really locked down, and everything. We're producing everything. And like I've talked with the team that does like the $7 social media. They were at the it's really, really, really buttoned up compared to, famously, WWE and the XFL 2020, Vince McMahon and the multi-million-dollar international endeavor and all this, like, it was a mom and pop shop. I mean, it was Vince McMahon and kind of what he wanted to do and all this kind of stuff. I don't, to Nick's point, I don't see them like, oh, let's just like put the Guardians here. Like, this sounds fun. And like, I mean, to me, they take this very seriously. Max, comments on any of this?
I mean, I don't think that it was like an accident. I think like there was like a miscommunication probably or something where it was like someone asked, hey, can I publish this page because I finished it? And they were like, yeah, you can. But then actually they didn't think about the consequences of that decision or never got up to higher ups. And in terms of like the names being on there, I mean, those names could have just been there because it was like one of the, maybe they made this page like way back in like July or something. And they were like, we're trying to choose from like 5 to 10 names per market, and we're just going to put one of them there that was unique for each market or whatever, so that we can remember that this is the spot for this team, etc. But like I said, because of the Guardians trademark deal, regardless of whether the XFL had it first or not, that doesn't matter anymore, especially when they're moving it to another city. That does not matter anymore. They will get into a dispute with the MLB if they actually use that name again. And they don't, and I promise you, they don't want that smoke. So for that reason, I don't really think this is real. And if I'm wrong, throw an egg at my face, and we're probably having the Orlando Aquaman that's called the Guardians, and I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really did go at Stefan last night because I was like, this is just total like nonsense, and like even these, like the guy, like this is all old stock images. Like this guy has, because believe me, I spent a lot of time looking at the XFL Dragons merch back in 2020. Like all this stuff has been here for so long, but then you have the names, and I told Stefan, I said, and that's why we have his page up today. I want to give credit where credit's due here, and advocate for our own, kind of alt football media and the people that sent this to Stefan to write the story. But like, I'll totally eat egg on my face. And like I said, the more, and same with Nick going through this today, it is really kind of seeking in. Like, we're going through the 12 stages of like grieving here today. And like, what is it like accepting and then moving forward? What are the 12 stages of grief there? But Evan, any other thoughts from you? We'll wrap this up here pretty soon, unless anyone else wants to call in. I appreciate, everyone's time today. Evan, any other stuff? I can't speak either. Any other thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the last thing I'll say is like, so you've got Nick who's like convinced, and then you've got Max who's saying it's, BS. I'm still kind of in the middle. Like, I don't know. I think some of it's real, some of it's not. Max brought up a good point about the Guardians name. No, there's no way they're going up against the MLB to use that, even though they had that name before. Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't think about that before, so that was a good point. But yeah, again, we'll just have to wait and see. We can't rush too many things, and I don't know, how accurate that is, or I mean, again, it could have just been something to, and I think Max pointed it out, like they had it drafted up a while ago, and they just kind of, put things in a certain place, and they were like, all right, well, we'll leave it there for now. Here's just some ideas, and then now, these ideas are coming out as like an official report of the names. I don't think that's, that could be something as to why this happened. That adds up to me, but it's a bit weird either way. So I don't know. Lot to unpack there.
I think Max has one more comment here. I have a question for Max. Max, you can answer that, and then you can give your comment you want to give, and then you can hop out. How mad was XFL today when the more or less angry than when the logos came out, or like what was the vibe in the room when this got slid across Redbird's desk?
Of all the things that have happened between the leaks, I think the worst one was probably the Larry Lee one.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Larry was the worst.
Because he just straight up gave away the bait or whatever on everything. And he said it on like a podcast of like one of his buddies and his buddy. And nobody saw that podcast. And I'm not going to tell you, but that podcast is not entirely wiped from the internet. So that was bad. And there were some other comments in the interview that were terrible also. But in terms of my final comment, these names, I hate them as much as anybody else who has said they'd hate them today, right? The new ones, including the Sea Dragons. Why? Just why? That's unnecessary. It just sounds redundant. The branding was already basically a Sea Dragon anyway, but whatever. These names sound terrible today, but I remember the entire national media, and me included, was kind of like, the Battlehawks name is kind of embarrassing. It sounds like it's out of an Overwatch, like, esports team names. Terrible. Okay? But the market embraced it, and now we can't live without it. Okay? So we're going to dog on these names if they're the real ones when they come out, and rightfully so, because I hate them. And there were better options. But when and if, and especially in San Antonio, because I think they definitely won San Antonio, when the names are embraced and they become, like in St. Louis, where CAW is the law, when they become the law, we're all going to look back and say, well, what else would they have chosen? This was obviously a team that everyone was going to love. It's going to make them loads of money, and we all look like idiots. So we'll just have to wait and see if they really embrace it. I think San Antonio will embrace their team no matter what it's called, honestly.
You said there were better options. What would you like? Just anything? The San Antonio Slippers? I mean, like literally anything. But like, was there a worse name they could have had than the Brahmas?
I mean, there are worse names, especially like controversial wise, but I don't think would have gone down that lane. But the better names would have been something more culturally distinct to San Antonio specifically, because like the Brahma Bull could have easily fit like Fort Worth or like El Paso, or like not El Paso, like Amarillo or whatever. Like that doesn't really stand out in San Antonio. There was a soccer team called the Scorpions, had a really good fan culture, was really popular. Their trademark expired. That name would have been really well picked up on. Or like a Hispanic theme could have been good if it was well done and properly connected to the community. The Brahma Bull thing just kind of reads off as the San Antonio Dwayne Johnsons. I'm sorry, but it does. And it's kind of embarrassing. But we'll see.
Well, there you go. I will say the Larry Lee interview, my proudest moment ever was when we had the XFL City Spoiled episode and just transcribing the interview and then posting that. Because like, God forbid anyone comes at me and it's like copyright, stolen material. I was very happy that I just transcribed that. Nick, any final thoughts from you? We'll kind of wrap this up unless anyone else. I think we've had good, seems like good viewership today, good traction on the comments. Nick, I really appreciate you riding through it with us. Anything else?
No problem. I mean, I'm just happy if this is true that it's the Defenders. Like, I'm a little worried, and I really like that. And I went to a few games that first season, so that was so much fun. So I'll be there, in February probably if they're back. And that's about it.
Well, it must be nice, Nick. I'm sitting here with the Seattle Sea Dragons. So, I mean, I understand that Nick's world is fine right now, but not all of us are as lucky.
Yeah, DCC Defenders, yeah.
yeah, the DC City Defenders. That would have been good. I think if this is the definitive list, I don't think I will ever call the Dragons the Sea Dragons. I will like parentheses the sea, like the Seattle Sea Dragons. I don't think I will breathing fire until the day I die. San Antonio Dwayne Johnson. I got a lot from Denzel there, Max. Evan, any other thoughts from you?
No, I think that's pretty much it. See if these team names are actually official, and then once they are, we'll take time to, soak it in. Whatever they are. Again, it might not be these. It might be some of these. It might be none of these. Who knows? But then we'll kind of, I think, do a further evaluation, because all this is just sort of initial reaction of a list that we can't really totally verify. So there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of speculation, and that's natural. But I'm really looking forward to next week more than anything.
Yeah, Evan, you're so balanced. We need to be a little more angry one way or another. It's like, well, we'll look at the facts here. We'll understand this is just a limit. That's good, Evan. You're a fine young man and going to a good school, and I think you're going to be okay. Evan's connections, right? Anyway, so thank you guys all. Yeah, you're welcome. I thank you guys all for saying goodbye today. Like I said, we have our episode already that came out this morning. Really good deep dive Max helped us put into with Andy Murray and I talking about the NFL Alumni Academy's work with the XFL. I really appreciate Max's help with that. And then obviously all of our CFL content leading into it. I don't know, is there a CFL game tonight or are they all tomorrow? Oh, Hamilton is at Montreal here at 4:30. So we have that to look forward to. And then whatever happens next week, we'll have our show Friday. I have a couple favorite guests. I think people will be happy coming back on, been talking with them. And then whatever is happening Wednesday, make sure you're subscribed. We're going to figure out all this stuff. I know that there is a Seattle event happening. Similarly, the San Antonio event. There is a St. Louis event, I believe, later in the week, but they're all kind of, this is very good. I mean, this is all happening next week, whether these are the team names or not. I mean, I'm very confident to say with all that. So working to do that, but I don't know. I want to go to the Seattle event, but I'm trying to figure out, like, is my time better spent here doing, I don't know. We'll have to talk offline, but does that make sense, guys? Like, I don't know what we need to do that way. If I'm better served kind of online holding the panel this way, but I really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed for all that stuff. Really exciting stuff here, Jenna. Whatever happens, I'll still be an XFL fan. Well, there you go. If you haven't lost Jenna, I think we are doing okay. Anyone want to plug anything else before we go?
Nope.
We're all good. Max hopped on anyway. Thank you guys so much. I will play this. And like I said, check out the episode from today. It was a good one. Thank you guys all so much.